What if your skin color decided where you could live, who you could marry, and what kind of life you were allowed to have? This was not a dystopian movie. This was real life in South Africa under a system called Apartheid. From 1948 to 1994, Apartheid ruled every corner of South African life. It wasn't just racism, it was racism turned into government policy. It was white supremacy written into law. Let's break it down and expose the full truth. What was apartheid? The word apartheid means apartness in Afrikaans, but in practice it meant total domination of black South Africans by a white minority. It officially began in 1948 when the National Party came to power, but the roots of apartheid started long before that. During colonial rule by the British and Dutch, land was stolen, rights were denied, cultures were suppressed. Apartheid simply made this oppression legal, systematic, and brutally efficient. How did it work? Under apartheid, South Africans were divided into racial categories: white, black, colored, Indian. Every person was required to carry a racial identity card, and that card controlled your life, where you could live, where you could work, what buses you could ride, who you could marry, what schools your children could attend. All of it determined by the color of your skin. Apartheid laws that controlled lives. Some of the most evil laws included the Population Registration Act, forced every citizen to be racially classified and carry an ID. The Group Areas Act gave the best land and housing to white people. Black South Africans were forcibly removed from their homes and dumped into overcrowded, underdeveloped townships. The pass laws required black people to carry internal passports. Without it, they could be arrested on the spot. The Bantu Education Act deliberately gave black children an inferior education so they would remain laborers, not leaders. The Prohibition of Mixed Marriages Act banned marriage and relationships across racial lines. These laws weren't just discriminatory. They were designed to humiliate, degrade, and control. Imagine being treated like a criminal, just for existing in your own homeland. Daily life under apartheid, black South Africans were banned from voting. They couldn't own land in most parts of the country. They were paid less, worked the worst jobs, and lived under constant surveillance and fear. Even hospitals and cemeteries were segregated. If you were black, you could die in your own country, but not be buried next to a white person. Apartheid was a machine, and its fuel was cruelty. Resistance and repression, but the people fought back. As early as the 1910s, groups like the African National Congress, ANC, began organizing against oppression. In 1960, a peaceful protest in Sharpeville turned into a massacre when police opened fire on unarmed protesters, killing 69 people and injuring hundreds. This was apartheid's message: obey or die. But instead of breaking the people, it sparked fire. Leaders like Nelson Mandela, Steve Biko, and Desmond Tutu emerged. Mandela was sentenced to life in prison for resisting. He spent 27 years behind bars. Youth movements rose. Students in Soweto took to the streets in 1976 to protest apartheid education. Police responded with bullets, killing school children. But the world was now watching. The world begins to act. By the 1980s, global pressure was growing. Countries began cutting ties with South Africa. Sanctions were imposed. Businesses pulled out. Artists and activists across the world, from Bob Marley to Miriam Makeba, raised their voices. South Africa became a global symbol of injustice. Inside the country, protests grew louder. Resistance grew stronger. The system could not hold forever. The fall of apartheid in 1990, Nelson Mandela was finally released from prison. In 1994, South Africa held its first democratic election. Black South Africans voted freely, many for the first time in their lives. Nelson Mandela became the country's first black president. Apartheid had finally fallen. The chains were broken, but the scars remained. The legacy today: apartheid is over on paper, but its wounds are still open. Most of the land is still owned by the white minority. Townships created under apartheid still exist, plagued by poverty and unemployment. Black South Africans remain the poorest, most disadvantaged group in the country. Inequality is everywhere, in wealth, education, healthcare, and justice. Apartheid may be history, but its ghost still lives. And until there is true economic and social justice, South Africa cannot be free. Why this story matters: apartheid was not just a South African tragedy, it was a human tragedy. It reminds us that laws can be used as weapons, and silence can be deadly, but it also reminds us of the power of resistance, of unity, of truth. We must keep telling this story, because if we don't, they will rewrite it. Thank you for watching. If this video moved you, like it, share it, and hit subscribe. We're reclaiming African history, one truth at a time.